In the far reaches of the Orion Verge lies a dusty, semi-terraformed colony known as Arel's Hope, a small human outpost under the control of the Korval Dominion. The Korval, a cold-blooded reptilian species, have ruled through intimidation and brutality for centuries. Their empire spans over 24 sectors, and their philosophy is simple: obedience through fear, peace through dominance. When humanity entered the galactic stage just a generation ago, the Korval initially dismissed them as insignificant, yet another primitive species given token representation in the Galactic Council. What they didn't understand, what no empire truly did, was what lay behind humanity's quiet smiles and diplomatic patience. Arel's Hope was supposed to be a peaceful trade outpost. It was designated neutral and low risk, a world of farmers, engineers, and miners. But as with many colonies, it fell under Korval jurisdiction due to its location within their designated security perimeter. That meant harsh curfews, military checkpoints, and arbitrary enforcement. The colonists endured. That was the human way. Among them was Isla Voss, a bright-eyed 7-year-old girl known to everyone in the outpost. Her laughter often echoed through the narrow alleyways of the central market. She had a habit of drawing in the dust with her fingers, leaving little suns and stars where boots would quickly trample them. Isla was the kind of child who reminded people what peace felt like, until one day, everything changed. On a cold, windswept morning, Ayla slipped away from her older brother Aaron, heading out early to see the arrival of a new shipment. She wandered too close to a Korval patrol station, drawn by the massive armored transport idling outside. A soldier shouted. She turned to run. A plasma bolt cut through the air and struck her in the back. She crumpled without a sound. There was no trial, no explanation, just a shrug from the enforcer and an indifferent report logged into the Dominion records. Subject failed to obey verbal command, threat neutralized. But someone filmed it. A grainy recording taken from a surveillance drone showed the moment of her death. Her small form collapsing, the Korval soldiers laughing in the background, one even stepping over her body with casual contempt. Within hours, the footage was leaked across interstellar human networks. The outcry was immediate and ferocious. Protests erupted on Earth and across every human colony. Social media burned with her name. Memorials were erected in real time, with candles and digital vigils that stretched from the Martian domes to lunar colonies. Ayla Voss became a symbol, not just of innocence lost, but of what the Korval had truly become, and what humanity could no longer ignore. But the most significant reaction wasn't public. It was private. Aaron Voss, once a decorated Terran Marine, had given up war to live quietly and raise his sister after their parents died. He hadn't wanted to pick up a weapon again. That day, as he stood over the scorched ground where Isla fell, everything inside him turned to ash and steel. There were no more negotiations to be had, no justice that would be granted through council chambers. He didn't scream or weep. He just left. By the time night fell, Aaron was gone from Arel's Hope. And somewhere, in the darkness of space, a human war began, not with a declaration, but with the silent vow of a brother. They will never touch another child again. And so the chains that held humanity in check cracked. The death of Ayla Voss had been brutal, senseless, and public, but the aftermath was seismic. As the video of her execution spread across human networks, outrage evolved into something deeper and more dangerous than protest: purpose. The Galactic Council issued its usual weak condolences, regretful incident, review pending, recommendation for disciplinary review. But no punishment followed, no apology from the Korval Dominion, not even an admission of wrongdoing. To most aliens, human children were just another biological stage in a species' life cycle. There was no sacredness, no concept of innocence, no understanding of what it meant to humans to lose a child to violence. But Earth remembered, humanity remembered, and humanity changed. On the planet New Geneva, millions stood in candlelight vigils. On Luna's capital ring, A memorial the size of a city block was lit with Isla's face, her final moments looping in haunting silence. Even on Mars, hardened terraformers wept. Across the stars, her name was whispered in a single, rising chant. Never again. But beneath that grief, another force stirred. Aaron Voss, Ayla's older brother and a former Terran Marine, had disappeared from the colony hours after her death. Some assumed he took his own life. Others thought he was wandering in mourning. The truth was much more deliberate. Aaron had gone dark. Hidden among the lesser-traveled slipstreams of human space, he activated an encrypted comm link known only to a few dozen souls, soldiers, spies, engineers, hackers, men and women who once served Earth in its dirtiest wars and deepest black sites. All of them had sworn to never fight again. All of them answered Aaron's call. They gathered in a hidden, orbital station deep in the asteroid fields of the Scarrow Belt. There, Aaron stood before them and played the footage one last time. When it ended, no speeches were needed. They called themselves the Pact of Ash. They weren't a resistance. They weren't interested in diplomacy or making demands. The pact existed for one reason: retribution. The Corval had taken a child. Now the pact would take everything from the Corval. While Earth's official channels fumbled with politics, the pact began moving in silence. Rhea Kintal, a former Terran intelligence asset with deep knowledge of Dominion systems, mapped key military sites, supply lines, and weaknesses in the Corval communications web. Old engineers started modifying stealth craft. Retired Marines began retraining in low-gravity assault tactics. Hackers infiltrated Dominion systems, planting backdoors in forgotten nodes. Meanwhile, Earth's official military leaders, though bound by council law, began quietly preparing. Ships scheduled for decommission were rerouted to hidden docks. New conscripts were called for advanced readiness drills. The Terran Defense Network tripled its encryption. In shadow, humanity was coiling, and all across the galaxy, aliens began to feel something they hadn't felt from Earth before: a cold, growing silence. The humans weren't yelling anymore. They weren't appealing to justice. They were planning. On a distant station orbiting a dead world, Speaker Adrex, a neutral observer from the wise but passive Heliari species, watched the footage of Isla's death again. He had seen 10,000 wars in his lifetime. But as he studied humanity's sudden stillness, he whispered to himself, "They are not grieving anymore. They are remembering. And when humans remember, they do not forget. When humans remember, they prepare. And this time, they weren't preparing for a war, they were preparing for an extinction. War rarely announces itself with fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, draped in silence, hidden behind routine transmissions and peaceful lies. That was how the reckoning began. The Corval Dominion, confident in their absolute authority, still believed the humans would howl, protest, and ultimately obey. They had broken hundreds of species before. What made Earth any different? In the Dominion's eyes, humans were emotional, undisciplined, and naive. Powerful in numbers, perhaps, but disorganized. Their ships were crude. Their diplomacy, loud. Their passion, a weakness. They didn't notice the silence, not at first. After the funeral of Isla Voss, Earth stopped sending formal inquiries to the Council. Protests dwindled. No more petitions, no more fiery debates in interstellar forums. The fury dimmed, on the surface. But the truth was far more ominous. Humanity had gone quiet because it had made a decision. The Pact of Ash, now a network of elite operatives and ex-military specialists, had infiltrated Corval infrastructure across two sectors. Docks, supply chains, orbital communications. They inserted spyware, mapped troop movements, and cataloged every possible vulnerability. They didn't need armies to begin with. They needed surgical destruction. In deep space, beneath the magnetics, shadows of Juno Station, human engineers activated a new breed of stealth drone, ghost-like crafts designed to travel silently, piggybacking on cosmic background radiation. These drones recorded everything: fleet deployment schedules, encryption algorithms, officer rotations. Meanwhile, the Terran government, bound publicly by Galactic Council law, began covert military mobilization. Ships listed as decommissioned were quietly refitted in off-world docks. Earth's most powerful AI, Athena X, was quietly awakened and linked to new fleet prototypes. Orbital shipyards that hadn't buzzed in decades now glowed with activity, hidden beneath cloaked defense, grids, and still, no declarations were made. The Corval Dominion's arrogance blinded them. They saw humanity's silence as submission, not strategy. When sabotage began, they blamed internal errors. A munitions depot exploded on Vrolax III. They blamed poor storage. A high-value general's cruiser vented its atmosphere during warp, engineering. Fault. They never suspected humans. They should have. Aaron Voss, now the ghost leader of the Pact, coordinated operations with lethal precision. His targets were not just military, they were symbolic. One strike team disrupted a Corval slave auction on Draenok Prime, freeing over 1,000 captives and leaving a message carved in plasma on the walls. The child was not the beginning, she was the last warning. Rhea Kintal led Deep Code, strikes into Dominion databanks exposing centuries of hidden war crimes. These were not broadcast for sympathy, they were ammunition. Every stolen life, every tortured soul, became justification for the storm to come. Meanwhile, Speaker Adrex, watching the stars darken around him, submitted a private report to the Galactic Council. It was brief. The humans have not forgotten. They have not forgiven. You think they're grieving, they are calculating. And when the fire comes, it will not stop at Corval borders. It will burn until the last ash remembers why it burns. But even he didn't realize how close the spark was. Humanity no longer asked for justice. They had studied their enemies, infiltrated their networks, and prepared their weapons. All that remained was a signal, one order. And when it came, the silence that had cloaked the galaxy would be replaced with something far older, far more human. Vengeance made manifest in flame. The galaxy did not hear the beginning. It felt it. In the outer Corval sector of Threxus, Zeta, a fleet of Dominion patrol cruisers vanished without a trace. No alarms, no mayday signals. One moment they were cataloging asteroid mining outputs. The next, nothing. When a reconnaissance ship was sent to investigate, it discovered only debris, fine particulate metal, cooled plasma traces, and an ominous scorch mark on the lead asteroid, written in Earth-standard glyphs. For Isla, the Corval Dominion still didn't understand. They assumed pirates, rogue mercenaries. A fluke. Then the real strikes began. Simultaneously, across 6 sectors, critical Dominion infrastructure was obliterated. Fuel depots detonated with internal sabotage. Communications arrays melted from within as viruses overloaded coolant systems. 2 high command stations suffered full gravity core collapses after unseen actors triggered their failsafes. But the most chilling blow came on the Dominion colony world Volnkas, known for its brutal forced labor camps. It was one of the Dominion's most secure worlds. No non-Corval had ever escaped it, until humans arrived. The Pact of Ash, led by Aaron Voss, dropped in via stealth pods, using a new cloaking method designed from civilian meteorological tech, hiding. Behind ion storms to mask approach, the assault was swift, surgical, not a single innocent harmed. Corval guards were neutralized with brutal efficiency. Hundreds of enslaved sentients, various species not just human, were freed and evacuated within hours. The prison's command center was burned to the ground, and the only thing left behind was a small, dust-covered drawing scorched into the wall. A stick figure with hair. A child's son. And the name? Isla. By then, the truth began to crack through the Dominion's arrogance. These were not isolated attacks. This was not rebellion. This was war, and it wasn't being waged by Earth's official military. It was being waged by humanity itself. Veterans, scientists, engineers, families who had quietly converted mining ships into mobile weapons platforms, colonies that had hidden supply caches beneath playgrounds, a species that had stared at the stars for centuries and waited, not to conquer, but to be pushed too far. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Heated voices debated whether Earth should be sanctioned, but many of the non-Dominion species refused. Footage from the prison raids began leaking across networks, stories of children pulled from cages, of humans risking everything to free strangers. Even species that feared humans began to respect them, or fear them more. Korval. Leadership, furious and humiliated, retaliated by ordering mass arrests on all human-controlled colonies within their borders. Dozens were taken, beaten, or executed. It only escalated the fury. From the rings of Saturn to the icy moons of Varlus Prime, humanity answered, not with diplomacy, not with appeals, but with precision violence. Drones swept in with silent wings. Comms went dark. Ships fell, not in disarray but in strategic silence. Speaker Adrex, now considered a radical among the Heliari, made a final plea to the council. You do not understand what you've unleashed. Humans are not at war for territory. They are at war for a child. And there is no fiercer god than a parent who has nothing left to lose. The galaxy trembled. The fire had arrived. And the fire had learned to speak. The Dominion believed it had time. Time to regroup. Time to retaliate. Time to remind the galaxy why it ruled by fear. But time, it turned out, had chosen a side. As the Dominion scrambled to reinforce its core worlds, humanity advanced, not as conquerors, but as executioners. What began as a whisper of vengeance had become a symphony of precision. Every strike, every ambush, every sabotage followed the same rhythm, swift, surgical, and deeply personal. The Pact of Ash no longer needed to move in secrecy. Their name was legend now, whispered across every fringe station and in the halls of silent, grieving colonies. They weren't a rebellion. They were a prophecy fulfilled. The Galactic Council was paralyzed. Political gridlock and outdated treaties left them toothless. And while diplomats debated, human forces advanced deeper into the Dominion's heart, not with fleets, but with fractures. They shattered infrastructure, sliced through supply chains. They infected AIs with mimicry viruses that whispered Isla's name through Dominion broadcasts at random intervals. Morale among Korval citizens plummeted. Fear turned inward. In a move that stunned the galaxy, the Pact of Ash broadcast a single message across every major network, hijacking council channels with a simple visual. A hollow image of Isla Voss's school picture, smiling and waving. Then, Aaron Voss's voice cold and resolute. You murdered a child and called it order. You burned her life and called it law. So now we bring you balance. Not conquest, not domination. We bring you the weight of your own deeds. One life for an empire. That message went viral, and with it, something else shifted. The galaxy began to choose. Entire species under Korval oppression, long too afraid to speak, began to rise. Not all took up arms, but many stopped cooperating. Administrators sabotaged records. Dock workers let supplies go missing. Local militias offered intelligence to the Pact. In the shadows of the Empire, the old order rotted. The Korval response was brutal. Entire towns on frontier worlds were purged in retaliation. Whole families, alien and human, were executed on suspicion of aiding the enemy. But the Dominion didn't realize that their fear tactics no longer worked. Because the fear had changed, Hans Korval High Command began moving in convoys, guarded by mercenaries who barely trusted each other. Strategic AI hubs were decommissioned in paranoia. Trade routes once bustling now sat quiet. The void littered with scavenged debris and drifting beacons that blinked only one word. Isla. Earth's official military remained quiet, visibly uninvolved. But behind the scenes they fed. The bar packed intelligence, resources, and technology. The Terran Diplomatic Corps issued no statements. They simply stopped answering council calls. And the most devastating strike came next. Not a bomb or an ambush, but a broadcast leak. Rhea Kintal and her infiltration team released recovered footage from a Korval War Council dated just days after Isla's death. In it, the High Chancellor laughed, saying, "A human child means nothing. They breed like insects. Let them cry. The footage broke the galaxy. Empires that once tolerated the Corval for trade or power now turned away. Neutral species closed their ports. Even some of the Corval's own vassals rebelled, refusing military conscription. The Pact didn't have to fire a shot that week. The galaxy began doing it for them. Aaron Voss watched as a Dominion dreadnought fled its own docks, abandoned by its crew. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The ashes were marching, and they carried the name of a child like a banner above the stars. Empires rarely fall with a roar. The strongest collapse in silence, when the heart of their people finally breaks. The Corval Dominion didn't see its end in a grand battle, but in the reflection of its own sins. As the Dominion tried to regroup in its final stronghold, Carmadon, a massive orbital city fortress thought impregnable, the Pact of Ash gathered for its final move. But by now the galaxy was no longer an observer. Entire species, long abused and silenced, pledged open support. Supply lines flowed toward Earth-led fleets. Even non-human commanders began to take orders from Aaron Voss. Not from governments, this wasn't revenge anymore. It was reckoning. The strike on Carmadon was planned in perfect symmetry with the moment Isla Voss had been murdered. One standard cycle later, to the hour. The Pact didn't want to erase the Dominion. They wanted them to remember. Human ships emerged from stealth in synchronized silence, orbiting the fortress not with brash intimidation but with calm finality. Behind them came fleets from dozens of liberated worlds, each bearing scars, each carrying the voice of a species that had learned one simple truth. If they can kill a human child, none of us are safe. The Dominion's response was desperate and chaotic. Fleet commanders argued, ships fled. Some surrendered before a single shot was fired. Inside Carmadon, Chancellor Gravar, the man who'd laughed about insect children, broadcast a final defiant message. Humanity is a virus. We will outlast your tantrum, we always have. But, outside Athena X, Earth's tactical AI calmly took control of Carmadon's defense grid, using a virus seeded a year prior. The same AI that once taught children on Earth now disabled the orbital cannons that had terrorized planets for decades. The Pact didn't fire blindly. They issued evacuations, protected civilians, even warned guards. They weren't monsters. They remembered why they fought, and then with the galaxy watching, they opened a secure channel, broadcasting directly to every corner of known space. On the screen, a simple schoolroom. In the center, the hollow image of Isla Voss, spinning in place with her arms outstretched, laughing. Beside it, footage of her funeral, the riots that followed, the wreckage of a Dominion prison, the message carved in plasma. For Isla. Then Aaron's voice, steady, solemn. This is not for vengeance. This is not conquest. This is closure. For one child, for millions like her, for those who were forgotten, and for those who never will be again. Then Carmadon fell. Not in a fiery inferno but with surgical precision. Critical systems disabled. Leadership arrested. The city floated, powerless, no longer a symbol of strength, but of defeat. The war was over. The Galactic Council, now fractured and humbled, moved to officially dissolve the Dominion. Its member worlds were given autonomy. War crimes trials began. New charters were drafted, ones that included human oversight. But the galaxy would never forget what ended the Empire. Not fleets, not politics. A child. Across 100 systems, statues were erected. Not of soldiers, but of a girl with messy hair and a wide smile reaching for the stars. Beneath them, a plaque in hundreds of languages. Her name was Ayla. She was enough. And above it all, Earth looked to the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. For now they knew. There is nothing more powerful in the galaxy than a child whose memory is carried by those who loved her.